So we're going to continue on here and look at the features of the brain. All right, so here we have the brain stem. The brain stem is formed from the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. You need to know those three things are what form the brain stem. Okay, the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. All right, and you can see those here in this portion of your brain down here. All right, and then also here, situated below the thalamus, but yet above the spinal cord. All right, here we have the midbrain. This can also sometimes be called the mesencephalon. It is associated with vision, hearing, motor control, and also sleep and wakefulness cycles. So here we see the pons, and this is kind of like the bridge that links the medulla oblongata to the thalamus. It helps connect the cerebrum and the cerebellum. The medulla oblongata houses essential nerve tracts. These are responsible for the regulation of very important basic life functions like respiration, cardiac function, the vomiting and coughing and sneezing and swallowing, the reflex centers are found here. So these are basic life functions in the medulla oblongata. So here we have the pituitary gland, and you can see it's kind of suspended there. This is an important component of the endocrine system, and it secretes hormones that actually affect other glands. So it is a small guy, but a big player. Next, we have the lateral ventricles. There's two, a right and left, and these are the two largest cavities in the brain, and these ventricles all connect and contain cerebral spinal fluid. Here we have the third ventricle, and then here you can see the fourth ventricle. This is the smallest. So we have the right and left, the lateral, then we have the third ventricle, and then the fourth ventricle, and you do need to know the locations of these. All right, so we're going to be looking at the 12 cranial nerves. I am going to expect you to know these with the Roman numerals, and then you need to be able to tell me whether they are predominantly sensory, motor, or both. There is a very, very good video that you have a link to. I may have even made an assignment. I can't really remember at this point if I made it an actual assignment or if I just put it there for you. But if it's not assigned, I highly, highly recommend it, because once you go through and follow along with this video and draw it out, I think I did make it an assignment. You will remember this. And so I provided you with a template because it takes a while to draw this out and follow along with the video. I like to do this in class, but the video is so well done, there's no point in me recreating that video. And so find the template and the video, and you'll go through and you'll diagram out each of these nerves, and you're going to need a red pen or marker and a blue one, and that's going to, and a highlighter, and that's going to help you differentiate whether it is sensory, motor, or both. And then there's little pictures actually of what they serve. So if it is hearing, it would have an ear, or if it is hypoglossal, it actually has a component showing you under the tongue. And these visual pictures are so much easier to learn than to just memorize. All right, it helps you to actually learn where these go. And as I think about these, I can actually see that diagram as I drew it and followed through with him. I can still see that from where I learned it. Okay, and this is the Armando Hostuguen video. He has lots of very, very helpful color coordinated visual type videos, and so if you struggle with any of these concepts, you may want to go through and look some of those videos up. They're really, really helpful, and when you draw things as a picture, your brain remembers it so much easier than if it's an actual word. Pictures are just easier to learn, and then it's kind of stuck in your brain when you associate that color as well, because you're making more neuronal connections and you're actually learning the material. Okay, and so these are the 12 cranial nerves. I wish it would have worked out to be number 12 instead of 13, but it doesn't really matter. They are numbered by Roman numerals and then by names. You need to know the Roman numerals that go with them. And so there's a mnemonic here to help you remember the first initial of each of these words, and then also to learn if it is sensory, motor, or both. And so the first one is, on old Olympus towering tops, a Finn and German viewed some hops. All right, and you can Google that. That's a pretty common one. Sometimes I make up my own, but sometimes it's easier to find some that are made. It works better when you make your own, but sometimes we just don't have time for that. And so I'm going to try to highlight here. On old Olympus towering tops, a Finn and German viewed some hops. So you would write that sentence out, and you have to practice this, and then write your letters out. On old Olympus towering tops, a Finn and German viewed some hops. All right, and so once you get that down, then you can practice writing the words: olfactory, optic, oculomotor, trochlear, trigeminal, abducens, facial, auditory, which is also known as vestibulocochlear. You need to know both names. Auditory works really well with the mnemonic. Vagus, spinal, accessory. Some people just write accessory, but you got to keep the spinal in there for this mnemonic to work. Hypoglossal. All right. So that's how you learn those, and you want to practice writing those out and putting your Roman numerals in. Then once you get that down, you got to learn the mnemonic for if they're sensory, motor, or both. And the way that goes is, some say marry money, but my brother says big brains matter most. Okay, and you can change these words and make them your own, make them very silly, or however you want to. Just try to find things that make sense to you, because then you're going to have more connections. Okay, and so the way that works is, let's make sure my pen is working here. I'll try a different color. Some say marry money, but my brother says big brains matter most. And so that tells you, are they predominantly sensory, motor, both, sensory, both, motor. Now that's not saying that those that say motor never have any sensory, but they're predominantly motor, okay? Predominantly. All right, and so you need to know all of those, and like I said, with Roman numerals. I really like this color-coded diagram here as well. I would highly recommend that you draw this out and color-code it, because it helps you associate things. It helps you to learn it easier. You'll spend less time studying when you take advantage of how the neurology of your brain actually works. All right. So I may ask you on the exam to list these out, perhaps, especially an in-class exam. Now, online, it's a little too easy to look that up, so I may ask you something a little more vague, like which is cranial nerve number such and such or something. This is a good diagram. This is very similar to what you draw out with Armando, except his are very quick, easy ways to draw what these particular cranial nerves do. I will give you a very short sense as we go through this PowerPoint. You can read here, and definitely read in your textbook to get a more detailed look at what these nerves do. But these 12 cranial nerves are very important for you to learn. So cranial nerve, we kind of already looked at near that olfactory bulb, near that area. You can see these are highlighted in red here. As I've already said, these can be really difficult to find the actual nerves when we're doing an actual dissection. So I really like this picture here, because when you are dissecting a sheep brain and everything is gray, it makes it really hard to find these nerves, okay? So olfaction is your sense of smell, and you need to remember that all of these nerves are paired. So they're bilateral, they're on both sides. So here you can see you have the cranial nerve 1 on both sides, all right? And I really particularly like this picture here. That's the actual sheep brain, and so this is going to be sensory. Cranial nerve 2 is the optic nerve. Well, optic, we know, has to do with vision, and so this is definitely sensory. You can see it is coming in. It's the top portion here of that optic chiasma. Okay, that top portion is where the nerve is considered. Cranial nerve number 3 is the oculomotor. Okay, so the name tells you it is going to be motor, and oculo lets you know it has to do with the eyes. So this serves the muscles of the eyes mostly. Next, we have cranial nerve number 4. This is the Roman numeral 5, and then if the 1 comes before it, that means 1 left, and if a 1 comes after it, or 2 1s come after it, that's going to be adding 1 or 2 or 3. All right, so that's how Roman numerals work. And so this is the trochlear nerve, and this supplies the superior oblique eye muscles, and so this is motor. Next, we have cranial nerve number 5, which is the trigeminal nerve, and this is going to be sensory and motor. Sensory for the face and mouth, and motor for muscles of mastication. People sometimes have trouble with this particular nerve. Trigeminal can cause what we call trigeminal neuralgia, which is pain in the nerve, and sometimes this is misdiagnosed as problems with your teeth or vice versa, but it can be quite painful. Cranial nerve number 6 is the abducens, and this serves the lateral rectus eye muscle. So this is again going to be motor. Here we have the facial nerve, and this can be both sensory and motor, and it supplies muscles of facial expression. The nice thing about learning the order of nerves is you can count down and figure out which ones are which, as long as you can see all of them. So the auditory or vestibulocochlear nerve is cranial nerve number 8. And this is sensory, and this helps us with our equilibrium and hearing. So next we have the vagus nerve. It's a little harder to see on the human brain over there, but it's the thicker nerve there kind of towards the back. You can follow the line all the way through. This has sensory and motor functions. For sensory, to the visceral organs. One way I tell students, I don't know if this, sometimes maybe it's confusing, but to me the way I remember it is, the saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but in the body, what happens in Vegas kind of goes everywhere. It goes down to the visceral organs. It goes down to many different things, is what I mean by that. But it also has motor regulation for those visceral organs. Next, we have spinal accessory, and you can see here for humans, this is a pretty good, easily identifiable one, because it has this little multifaceted look to it. It's got all the little segments there, and I think of the rows of the spine, okay? And so in the sheep brain, it doesn't look the same, but in the human brain, you can see we have all these little segments here, all right? And so that one to me really stands out. That's cranial nerve number 11. Lastly, we have cranial nerve number 12, which is hypoglossal, below, and gloss refers to the tongue. So this supplies motor muscles of the tongue. And you can see in this picture here on the left, it's kind of got like 3 little branches attaching it, and it comes out as one. So that one kind of stands out to me as well. So if you can find the differences in sizes and how these look different from each other, that really helps for identification too.